Imagine every second of your waking hour being hounded by stress, worry, and uncertainty. I'm sure that sounds familiar to some of you, right? Now, imagine that, but on top of that, you also have to deal with financial instability, cost changes, and much, much more. That is the unfortunate reality that many small business owners have to adapt to. When we first started working on our project, we originally just wanted to contact a small business owner so that we could learn about the inner workings of that business. However, we soon realized that behind the glamour that many people associate with being a small business owner, there was a plague of problems that they had to deal with.
To really understand what small businesses go through, we thought that just researching wouldn't be enough. We wanted to experience it firsthand. Our plan was to find local businesses in Los Angeles, contact them, observe their daily challenges, and just try to get some real-life experience around the business world. We contacted many different businesses, and eventually, we were able to connect with Mr. Jim, who was willing to allow us into his world. Growing up, I've always been fascinated by stories of successful leaders who have steered their organization or company to success. Now, this project gave me the opportunity to step into their shoes and truly experience the struggles and rewards of entrepreneurship. For future entrepreneurs or current small business owners, or even high school students and college students right now, it is becoming more and more imperative to be aware of the turbulent world around us. As you walk past roads and streets, you quite often see empty storefronts devoid of both life and customers. These people dedicate their job, time, and money, fully committing into their business, only to get crushed by the cruel reality. Arming yourself with the knowledge and skills to navigate this world around us has never been so important than now. We began our search for small businesses through Google Maps, which in hindsight wasn't the most professional method. It didn't end up working too well, so we created a survey which Mr. Ehrlichman advertised during his classes. Eventually, one of our peers ended up signing it, which led us to Mr. Jim. At first, we had fumbled around schedules, meetings, and interviews. We had no idea what we were doing. When we finally managed to schedule a meeting with Mr. Jim, we ended up being late. Thankfully, it seemed he didn't mind too much, and so we sat down in his waiting room and started talking.
Throughout the course of our project, we made sure to schedule everything in advance. We had prepared questions days in advance. We scheduled interviews weeks in advance. Overall, we planned to have a total of 6 interviews, with the last one taking place during the 7th week. This greatly helped mitigate our stress regarding the whole process. We did leave 2 weeks at the end of our project to account for any unknown variables that could impede our process. And it would turn out that these 2 weeks would be really good for us, as we would encounter emergencies, but thankfully, due to those 2 weeks that we had made for ourselves, we would be able to adapt and eventually overcome.
Our first to third meetings focused on understanding the world of a small business owner. Through interviews with Mr. Jim about operations, finances, and marketing, we gained valuable insight into risk management, strategic planning, and problem solving. Our third to sixth meetings were initially planned to focus on helping him identify and solve a problem. However, we needed an additional meeting due to time constraints.
One of the key takeaways from our interviews was the importance of small business owners managing every aspect of their business. As Mr. Jim is not only a business owner, he's also an acupuncturist, customer relations manager, and much, much more, all while adapting to the ever-changing trends of the world. And similarly, due to these trends, acupuncture is looked at with suspicion. So Mr. Jim has had to diversify his sources of income into herbal medicine and more pharmaceutical remedies. However, one of the most eye-opening takeaways was the isolationism that Mr. Jim described. As almost all of the decision-making and planning is done by one person, this can lead to a high sense of isolationism. So, balancing the fact that you are the sole employer and employee with ensuring financial stability is immense.
One of the biggest takeaways from this project was learning how to have meaningful, productive interviews. When we first started, we didn't know what we were doing. We were all over the place. We didn't know how to ask the right questions. We didn't know how to keep the conversation flowing naturally. And we didn't know how to follow up in a way that made sense. However, as we started to do it more often, we started to get the hang of it. We started to ask critical questions that dive deeper into his answers without sticking to a rigid set of scripts. We also learned how to have a natural conversation, engaging in active listening. Finally, we also learned how to manage ourselves better during our meetings so we could reflect on our past interviews more efficiently. Guiding a conversation and making it feel natural is a skill that it will be useful in any professional setting in our future. Another big lesson was the importance of adaptability. Our plans hardly ever went as we expected, whether it was either rescheduling, pivoting during our conversations, or just adjusting on the fly. That's why it was so important for us to do things like practice interviews and factoring in unpredictable variables ahead of time.
We also developed better organizational skills. From managing research to structuring interviews, we learned how to effectively plan, execute, and reflect on our work. Taking detailed notes, summarizing key points, and refining our approach after each meeting helped us improve and stay on track. But perhaps the most eye-opening lesson was learning how small business owners think. Mr. Jim approached every decision with a long-term perspective, carefully balancing risk and reward. Observing his mindset firsthand helped us understand the importance of financial management, customer relationships, and business sustainability, things that are rarely discussed in theory but are essential in practice.
By the time we wrapped up our interviews, we realized that running a small business wasn't just about ticking off a to-do list. It's not just about following a strict blueprint. It's about constantly improving, adapting, and learning things as you go. Most of the time, even you don't know what you're doing and where you're going. Still, you have to make do with the resources you have. What we thought would be just a straightforward exploration into business turned out to be a much deeper dive into what it really takes to make any endeavor work. We learned not just the ins and outs of business, we learned how to weigh the risks and benefits during choices, we learned how to make better decisions, and we also learned how to grow from our experience.